Welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors, where we share real stories of people getting stuck up Shit Creek, the paddles they used to get out, and hope for anyone stuck up their own Shit Creek right now. Today's guest has one of the most unique stories we've ever had on the show. Imagine growing up unable to eat. No pizza parties, no birthday cake, no grabbing a meal with your friends. Ben Sutter spent most of his life surviving on formula and feeding tubes before facing an entirely new challenge, learning how to eat and not fear food. Let's meet Ben. Well, Ben, thank you so much for being here on Shit Creek Survivors. If you would introduce yourselves to our audience.
Yeah, my name is Ben Sutter, and I have something called eosinophilic gastroenteritis, which is a long way of saying I can't eat food. So let's see. When I was even in the
Wow.
womb, my parents were having issues. Obviously, my mom. Let's see. She was just constantly sick, vomiting all the time, and I was the youngest of three at that point. So they knew, like, okay, this is what it should be, and this is pretty darn far from it. And so
Right.
let's see. They spent a lot of time just trying to reduce her diet down to whatever she was able to tolerate. And things eventually got better, but not perfect. And then eventually, when I was born, I was having reactions in just everything constantly. So much so to the point where I
Okay.
was scratching constantly, so much to the point where I'd start bleeding. They had to tape my sleeves to my wrists so I wouldn't scratch and bleed. Screaming
Oh,
constantly, just
wow.
upset, wouldn't sleep through the night. I would sleep for 2 hours. I'd wake up. They'd have to drive me around
Yeah.
for 45 minutes to get me to fall asleep. Then I'd sleep for 2 more hours and wake up. And this went on and on and on for months. I was reacting to being breastfed
Yeah.
and reacting even if they cooked with milk in the house. So if they cooked a lasagna in the microwave or something, I would react. I'd break out. I'd start screaming to the point where they were cooking everything at a neighbor's house just to try
Wow.
and prevent any reactions. And this went on for 15
So you were
months.
having
Go ahead.
Whoa. So your responses were they mainly like your skin, or was it also like your airway would maybe even swell up? Were you having that almost like closure of the throat type stuff?
Um, I was an infant, so to my understanding, it was just skin level stuff. I didn't have anything
Okay.
throat level closure, etc. Excuse
Gotcha.
me. Uh, have had some of those when I got a little bit older. Thankfully, not anything to the point where I needed to be hospitalized for it.
Oh,
But yeah, it was all
good.
just skin level stuff and constant.
Yeah. And so you're
Um,
always irritated as a baby then. Yeah, that's
yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah, just constant screaming. And like I said, they went around to doctor after doctor after doctor trying to figure out what was wrong. Because again, I was youngest of three, and I'm like, this is not normal. And doctors being kept just saying, oh, kids are fussy. Kids are upset. They scream, they cry, they don't sleep. Like, no, we have three kids. This
Y
is so far from normal. And they
Right.
eventually found one in Cincinnati, about a 3-hour drive from my parents' house, where they're like, yeah, we believe you. And my parents described it as kind of like a weight off their shoulders. And I was diagnosed and
Yeah.
put on something called Neocate Splash. It's a little juice box looking thing. It's a perfectly balanced dietary replacement. It's got all the nutrients you need to survive. And I've been surviving off that and that alone since I was 15 months old. And I'm now 25.
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a long time. That's a long time. And I
Yeah.
thought this would be a great fit for the show because it's so outside the box of what I've heard that it's so interesting. And like, knowing that there's people like you out there who aren't even able to consume food. I mean, how often do we take that for granted?
Yeah.
Um, do you remember like different ages where maybe you tried to eat and it didn't work out, or was it just basically let's just not mess with it, let's stick with the what we know works kind of mentality?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially, when I was first diagnosed, my parents were ecstatic, like, okay, we have something. At least he's eating. At least he's getting nutrients. But I was just trying to drink it orally, and I wasn't drinking enough of it. And they obviously wanted to
Okay.
try and introduce regular foods. But the process for me to trial a food was I would eat one food consistently for a month, just adding one thing. So it's known as elimination diet. So take everything out and then just add one thing back at a time. So I was
Yeah.
eating just the formula, and then I would add like one little food in. I would eat that consistently for a month, and then I'd go in and have an upper endoscopy, which is where they knock you out and stick a camera down your throat to check for internal swelling of the esophagus. And if there was no
Oh,
external reactions and if there were no internal swelling of the esophagus, then I could continue that food. And by the time I was 10, I had had 15 or 20, honestly, they stopped counting, plus endoscopies, and none of them came back clear. So I could have sugar, sugar. I could basically just have sugar. And so I was living
wow.
entirely off the formula and then sugar as well.
Wow. So you would, I would assume, have to prep your whole day around that. You'd have to make sure that wherever you were going, you had what you needed so you could consume calories so you could keep moving. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, thankfully they were in this. I mean, they literally used like exactly like a juice box, like an apple juice box or whatever.
Okay.
And when I was 3, I was diagnosed as failure to thrive. So I just wasn't drinking enough of the formula to actually sustain myself. So my parents made the very hard
Okay.
decision to have a feeding tube put in. And so that
Uh,
kind of took away a lot of those fears of like, okay, he's not growing, but now we don't have to worry about that. So I would be hooked up to the
hmm.
tube feed for 1 hour on, 1 hour off. And it was a little backpack that was about this big. I still actually have one with a feeding pump that would just connect into a little port in my stomach and it would just pump the formula for 1 hour. I'd get off for an hour and then get back on.
Wow. Wow. That's wow. And how many times would you do that all day on off, or is that like just
Yep.
certain hours?
All day. And then I'd
Wow.
actually be hooked up while I was sleeping as well. And that came with its own challenges because the port, while it was very effective what it did often disconnect. And the machine isn't smart
Oh,
enough to tell the difference between connected and not connected. So it would literally just pump the formula into the bed for 3 hours. And then you wake up in
yeah.
this disgusting, sticky, smelly mess. It happened
Yeah.
so often to the point where we coined a term for it of feeding the bed. And I'm sure anyone that has a feeding pump is reliving some probably horror stories right now of all the times it's happened because it was part of life.
Really.
Yeah.
I noticed when I ended up in the hospital, we take for granted so much about our bodies. I mean, from food to walking to talking to hearing to all of it. It's so crazy how, like, at one moment for a person like me, everything can be fine. And then, drop of a dime, it changes. And for you, you just came into this world with that kind of different thing. So
Yeah.
you had to approach it different. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, good on you for staying the course. I mean, that's amazing, man. Like, do you remember any times when you were really struggling with it? Did it affect your identity growing up? Were you like, why am I different or angry even?
Oh yeah. There were so many times because my family's Christian, have grown up believing in God and things, and I obviously grew up
Hmm.
in that environment and very much believed in God my entire life. And there were so many times I just sit in my room and just be so frustrated. I don't understand why everyone else gets to have this regular life and I get to have something that is so different. And you hear anytime you go to a restaurant, anytime you go and sit down at a meal, what does everyone talk about? Food. It's, oh, this meal is so great.
Food.
Here, try this
Yeah.
piece. Here, try that. Let's have a drink. Let's experiment and enjoy all these different things. And I was always on the outside of that. And so, my parents were very thoughtful of, okay, we don't want you to not want to be around food. So every single night we
Hmm.
sat down for dinner and I ate shaved ice. Literally, my parents got a refrigerator that had crushed ice and they just put crushed ice in a bowl and I just eat the crushed ice because it was something to participate, even if it wasn't the same as everybody
Yeah.
else, to the point where I have an industrial
Wow.
sized snow cone machine that I still make snow cones with and still eat them on a somewhat regular basis. You
And I bet you're good at it too.
Yeah.
I bet you make good snow cones after all that practice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a really That's a cool way to do it. That's awesome to feel included and not left out because it matters, you know what I mean? Like, it matters, and the fact that you can say out loud that you recognize that your parents were doing their best to include you, they saw you, they didn't define you by it, like all this kinds of stuff. That's love,
Yeah.
that's amazing love, and
Yeah.
by witnessing that yourself in life, you'll be able to replicate that back to somebody else, which is going to be an amazing gift. That's actually a benefit that's going to come out of all this. So
Yeah.
I'm,
I-
I'm just excited for you.
I'm just thankful I have incredible parents and my condition is genetic. So there's a very high chance that my kids are going to have it as well.
You'll be able to walk them right through it.
That's the goal.
Or if you, if you don't have kids, then, you can also contribute in other places too. We
Yeah,
don't have any kids, but I am the best uncle I can be to my niece and nephew. You know what I mean?
gotcha.
So
Yeah,
you can always find your family.
yeah,
It's good stuff. So how did you start getting towards the age where you are now not? Like what happened that was different that has now made it so you're not always on a feeding tube?
yeah. So from the age of 3 all the way up until about 18, 15, I was using the feeding tube. And I mentioned having to go in and trial food for a month or so before trying to be able to actually eat it. And by the time I was 20, the only foods I could have were potato, rice, and corn. And I liked them in crunchy
Mm,
textures. I started eating around the age of 12. Those things finally passed because I was allergic to milk, eggs, wheat, peanuts, soy, and red dye, which is most everything.
and everything. Yeah.
And those were just
Yeah.
allergies. So if I wanted to trial a
Wow.
food, I would react to things on top of those allergies, and that would just be the EOE flaring up. So it wasn't necessarily the same
Wow.
as like, oh, if I'm not allergic to it, then I can have it. That's not unfortunately the case.
Mm,
So
yeah.
yeah, by the time I was 20, the only foods I could have were potato, rice, and corn. And I only liked them in crunchy textures. So potato chips, corn chips, and rice chips. Um,
Yeah.
so I've eaten way too many bags of Lay's in my entire life, but that was just I was the guy that ate juice boxes and ate chips, and that was about it. And that was, I had a lot of friends in high school and things, and that was just my normal. They joked about me having diabetes and other things. My wife just got home as
Yeah.
well, so there may be a little bit of background noise. Forgive me for that.
No, of course. Yeah, it's totally fine. Yeah, so you just mentioned something that never occurred to me is texture. Texture
Yeah,
of your food. You said you were into the crunch because like, there's not a lot of yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, if I don't eat chips for a long time, it's not so much the chip that I miss, but the crunch,
yeah,
Or like if
yeah,
I'm eating
yeah,
tacos, I might like taco bowls, but I also like the crunch of the chip if I can have it. I have
yeah,
some food allergies, obviously nothing compared to you, but sugar is one of the things that hurts my stomach pretty bad. So I'm having to do that. I'm learning how to do that in restaurants. Again, nowhere near where you're at. But it's funny when you start excluding things from what you're supposed to eat, how hard it is to eat when you go out. Like it's really
yeah,
hard. And then you feel like a pain in the butt too, because you're like, I didn't, bus. So you're kind of explaining the whole story. Like, I can't have this. I'm sorry. I don't want to be a pain, all that
yeah,
kind of stuff. I know that can be challenging when you go out, but
yeah. I just it is amazing how everything in the world is built around food, especially like milk and eggs. Even just those, like there's so much of that in just about
mhm.
everything to the point where could I probably have a chef that would be willing to make something that works around all those different things? Probably. Is it worth it for their time and my time and me to probably not end up eating all that much of it? Also, almost definitely not. And then I have to pay for a bunch of money for whatever not going to eat a lot of. So it's
Right.
just bring my own.
Yeah. Do you I know some people, um, when you talk to like, real fitness people or, gurus and whatever, they talk about food as a fuel. You know what I mean? I only see it
Mm,
as fuel. I need this many calories, this kind of food, and it's fuel. Have you
yeah.
ever been able to do that and like kind of see it as an advantage almost? Like, well, I don't get to eat these things, but it turns out these things are bad for me. So although I'm being forced to stay away from them, it is beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. They're especially in high school, I made a lot of jokes of like, people would joke about, oh, when you want to lose weight. And I'd be like, well, I have a diet for you if but um
Yeah.
they're hypothetically a perfectly balanced diet, and so you can't really gain weight, you can't really lose weight as long as you're drinking enough of them. And one box is about 237 calories, and I would drink roughly 12 a day. And one box is $8, so it equates to roughly $40,000 a year. Thankfully, it's covered by insurance, but yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That's not fair. That's not
yeah,
fair. But I get
yeah.
but if you I wonder how the math works out for a regular person, how much they spend on food in a year in comparison to that. I don't know.
Great
That'd be an interesting thing to see.
question. Yeah. I'd be willing to bet it's less. Yeah, it has to be less. Basically, I
Yeah.
got 2 months of formula shipment here a while ago. They ship it to my door. It's like 20 pounds per case, and I got 32 cases, which should equate to about 2 months of formula. That
Wow.
dollar estimation value is about $7,000, which is the price of my car currently, which is just funny to think about.
Whoa.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so let's see. One case is $215, and that would go through that 2 days. So unless you're eating
Yeah. You're
$215
spending
worth of
more.
food, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good amount more. And,
Yes. Yes. That is quite a bit.
yeah,
At least you save the money on going out.
that's true. Yeah, yeah. There have been some very
And it,
fun moments where we're sitting at a restaurant and I'm not eating anything, and you can just tell the waiters like, "Do you like not have enough food?" Because I'm married, and we'll still go out to eat, we'll go out to dinner or whatever. It's never bothered me.
yeah.
But yeah, they just always have this kind of puzzling look of like, "Are you okay? Like, what's going on here? You're not eating anything, and you've gotten this full meal for the lady you're with." It's just always funny to me.
Yeah. 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 That would be funny. What once you see it as funny and like how it's funny when it comes over their face, like what is this? And you can kind of live in that moment. I guess you're
Uh,
kind of used to that though, growing up with it. So you're able
yeah.
to kind of you've probably got a courage in you that not many people do because you've always been not walking alone because you've always had friends, but there has been something that kind of made you different. You know what I mean? And had have you focus on your diet, had to have you focus a little bit more on things that other people don't. Um, yeah, I mean, that I'm sure is a pain in the butt most of the time, but you're probably a very disciplined person as well. Is that a good guess when
Uh,
you come in, or is that a
Unfortunately, I am
reach?
like so far from disciplined. I think I have, well, I got diagnosed with ADHD, so that probably has something to do with it. But
Yeah,
yeah, I struggle to like even brush my teeth in the morning. I just don't have any habits whatsoever. It is funny because
really.
I like variety in everything in life, with the exception of food. And
Yeah,
I'm kind of jumping around all over the place here, but I have gotten to a point now where I am able to start eating food for the first time, and that's been a whole weird experience as well. As at the age of 20, a new medication came out to the market that was experimental, and it was showing a lot of progress for people with EOE and EOS. And so, my doctor reached out and was like, "Hey, you might be a good candidate for this," because a lot of people actually have EOE, but not many people have it to the level of severity that I do. A lot of people can have it and
okay,
still live a 95% normal life. Obviously, I'm,
got it.
that 1% that's, way outside on the spectrum. But medication came out. The doctor was like, "Okay, this works a little bit differently than other medications." So previously, you wanted to trial a food, you'd have to eat that one food for a month and then have an upper endoscopy. This is going to be,
Yeah,
you're on the medication for 2 months, have an upper endoscopy, and if it's clear, you're good to eat anything excluding the major allergens. And so it went from, okay, there's potential. I'm not going to hold my breath. I've gotten to the point, because this is college now, where I'm comfortable. This is going to be my life. It is what it is. At least I've got something that's relatively normal. So go
right.
in, I had the upper endoscopy, and it comes back as clear. And it was the first time in 15, 16 years that I had had an upper endoscopy that was clear. It meant there was no swelling in the esophagus, nothing was flaring
That's
up, like
amazing.
everything was okay. And while I was still under anesthesia, the nurse came out, was talking to my wife and saying, "Hey, this medication works differently. I'm sure he's so excited. What do you think he's going to want to try first?" And Grace looked at the nurse and was like, "Hey, I don't think you understand. Like, he's spent his entire life being told food is dangerous, food can hurt him. He spent time in the hospital with food. He's not excited. He's afraid of food." And, came out of the hospital, went home that night, and Grace put a little baby carrot and a piece of celery on a plate for me. And I'm not an anxious person. I'm kind of a social butterfly. I don't get worried or nervous in situations and things generally. But I was
Right.
sweating looking at that carrot. And I still remember taking a bite. It was so small that Grace didn't even like, "Are you sure you took a bite? I can't see the mark of, whatever." And I was like, "Nope, I took a bite. It tastes like dirt. I'm never trying it again. It's awful." I just basically just walked away for like 6 months.
Yeah.
And it
Oh
was really
wow.
weird to feel like, okay, this thing that you've been desperately looking for your entire life, now you can go do it. And there's no restraints on you going do it. The only thing that is holding you back now is your mental capacity. Are you willing to go through that extremely uncomfortable situation? to
Yeah.
try and learn to eat.
Yeah. So how'd you break through that? I know this is the moment in everyone's lives where they know something, they could do something or need to do something or want to do something, but nothing happens until they actually do it. And I talk a lot of times about like fear being a lake that it looks a mile wide and a mile deep. And you just get worried and you're like, I'm not going to take this step. I'll wait till the right time. I'm going to do it, when all the dice are in order or whatever it is. But then you finally take that first step and you think you're going to sink to the bottom and it ends up being 2 inches deep. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I can do this,
Yeah.
What was that process like for you, having to face that fear?
Yeah. Um, to be honest, there were a number of times where I would try food just a little bit here or there. I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna do it this week, and then I'd do it for a couple of days, and then I'd just fall off, and nothing really changed. I kept living the exact same diet, exact same life up until I was 24, and then a doctor recommended I go to food therapy. I was like, okay, great. I'll get on the phone, had a consultation. Was expecting them to be like, yep, we'll do once a week therapy. I'll try something. I'll talk about my feelings and we'll move on. Right. Like just kind of get it out of the way.
Right.
And they're like, yep, that's an
Yeah.
option. Or the option that we recommend, which is eating disorder therapy. So you'll be at our location here for 4 days a week, 3 hours a day. And then we'll probably recommend some other form of care after that as well. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm working a full time job. I've got a wife, we've got 2 dogs, we live in an apartment. I'm supporting all this. I don't have time for that. I just don't. I also don't want to, if I'm honest. I
Right.
don't want to put myself in a position where I'm uncomfortable day in and day out, knowing that I'm going to be face to face with this thing that I'm desperately afraid of, just for the sake of
Hmm.
being able to eat food when I've got something that works here. And
Yeah.
I will never forget going on a drive with Grace. And, people talk about like hearing from the Lord, hearing God. And it's never anything audible. It's just always sort of, scriptures talk about a gentle whisper or something, just hearing a thought kind of thing. And you just know it's from God. I don't know how to else to explain that, but I just had this moment where I was thinking
I'm
like,
with
man,
you. I'm with you.
yeah, I don't want to do this. And I will never forget hearing the Lord say like, you can do the once a week, but nothing's going to change. Or you can commit and you can be uncomfortable and you can change. And
Mm.
tearing up thinking about it. Cause like committing to that was, it sounds so easy for someone who's like, oh yeah, it's just food. Yeah, for sure. But when you spend your entire life in and out of hospitals and in and out of doctor's appointments and in and out of having reactions and heck, by the time I was 10, my parents were asking me like, hey, how do you feel? And I was like, fine, despite the fact that I was uncomfortable all the time and I was having reactions, I was having all these different things. I just knew they couldn't do anything about this. And I didn't even know that until I asked them, 6 months ago. But coming
Yeah.
to that point was so hard. And then I remember walking in the first day and they're like, okay, I want you to go home tonight and make a list of all the things that you're excited to try and all the things that you do not want to try at all. Like this is a hard no. And I came home and I put three
Hmm.
things on that list: celery, toast. Those are the only two things that I was excited to try because I judge everything based off of how crunchy it looks. Nothing else, just how
Oh,
crunchy it
okay.
is. And then the only thing that
Okay.
I was like, I do not want to try is spaghetti because the opposite of crunch is this weird, soft, wiggly thing that is spaghetti.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that
I
makes
went back
sense.
in, yeah. And I went back in the next day and they're like, okay, we're going to start with spaghetti. I was like, why'd I make the list? Like, come on, this is, uh,
Yeah.
um, so it really was, okay, we're going to jump in and do this. And I spent a lot of time there because they paired me up with like a regular, just general therapist to kind of go over the emotional side of things. Obviously lots happening, a lot of processing, a lot of different things while going through the food therapy, and
Hmm.
brought back up a lot of stuff from middle school when I was like, man, I was talking earlier about there were so many times where I was just mad at God. Brought me back a lot of times
Hmm.
where I don't want to do this. I would sit in my room and just be like, God, end it. I don't want to be here. I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired of being alone, feeling like I'm the only one who can do this, having no desire to go through life because it didn't feel like I had any joy. Like I was like, I'm never gonna get married. I'm never gonna find anyone that cares. Like kind of hard to have a bright outlook on the future when one of your five senses is completely gone and you feel like no one will ever love you because of it. And that's, obviously a whole thing. But
Yeah. 100%. Those are so many people try to play off like they were weak because they had that feeling or that emotion. Those are normal feelings and emotions on another level because you're kind of feel trapped in the situation and you don't have a clear roadway out. It takes a lot of courage to live in those seasons because those are the ones that matter. Those are the ones that, although while you're going through it, a second feels like an hour, then all of a sudden you get like 5 years down the road and you look back and it seems like it happened in 10 seconds. You know what I mean? It's like you look back, it seems like a short period. You're living in it. That's where it's hard. That's where it's like you're sitting in it on a daily basis and you're, I don't know, just recycling your mind. Why is this happening to me? You know? And you didn't do anything to deserve it either. You know what I mean? It's not like, yeah, it's a tough thing, but
yeah, I've got two brothers as well, and one of them is allergic to peanuts, and one of them can eat every food. None of the son, no issues whatsoever. And so I really felt like I don't know if I just hit the genetic unlucky lottery, like what happened here, but I am so different and so allergic to everything to the point where, I was obviously reacting just to airborne things. And even I got to the point where I was trying, oatmeal and various different things and still allergic to milk, still allergic to eggs. But I tried something that had whey protein, which is just milk based protein. And my whole face puffed up, my throat didn't close fully, but I could definitely feel a little bit harder to breathe. And it got to a point where I'm like, okay, do I take an EpiPen? And I just kind of waited around and thankfully everything started to get better. But still, still have issues and still have all those different things of not living a normal life, but
yeah,
closer a little bit every single day.
it's easy when you're in those seasons too, to develop resentments. Um, for me, it was like I had resentments towards other officers who didn't get shot. You know what I mean? It's like, how can you criticize me for how I'm reacting when you've never been through it? Or, you almost like look like you're viewing someone else's life as being easier. And you don't want to compare yourself to someone else's life because it is the thief of joy. But when you do it, it keeps hammering them in that nail of, will this ever end? Will it ever balance out? And all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
you, sir, are a testament to hanging in there and getting through it despite the feelings that you were having. Although that is the hardest part to get through, I think, is the feelings. Because
Yeah.
one of the things I've said before is like when you're in the hospital and everyone's telling you it's going to be okay, all those people get to go home that night. You don't.
Yeah.
So yes, they're giving you good well wishes, but but sometimes it comes off to the patient as that's easy for you to say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah, and that can get tough. What would you say to the person who's either stuck in their own shit creek, which it can be completely different from your story, or if you want to talk to somebody who's actually experiencing what you've actually been through? What would you say to those people?
I'll start with a person who's going through whatever it is that they're going through. No matter how much you feel like you are alone, you're not alone. I have a very rare
Mhm.
condition, but I have since started a TikTok channel and just, hey, this is this weird thing that's happening to me. And I've gotten so many messages of people being like, I have the same thing. I'm going through something similar. Might not be the same disease, but I can't eat food. I'm living off this. I'm living off that. And I've had long conversations just like, yeah, this sucks. But you know what? At least we're not in it alone. And you can just kind of
Yeah.
bounce off between the other person. And you're absolutely right. It does feel like it's an eternity when you're going through it. But everything does come to an end. And you will eventually get to a point where you are so much stronger because of this difficult thing that you've gone through that you feel like, okay, not only am I stronger because of it, but now when I see someone going through that same thing, I can help pull them out of it because I am a testament to surviving through it. And even if I didn't want to survive through it in the moment, I'm still here.
Yeah.
So,
That's a great statement. Like that's a spontaneous utterance that really hits because that came from your heart, and it's so true, so true. Well,
uh,
Ben, I am so blessed to have met you today and for you to have shared your story about what you've been through since birth and how that went and the fear involved, even when, towards the end, when finally you were given the permission to try eating and how scary that can be to even try something that's new.
yeah,
Um, and, and a lot of people out there know that feeling when they want to do something, but they're scared to do it. After I got shot, I suddenly had a tremendous fear of heights, and I didn't know where it came from, but I couldn't handle even looking up at a building standing outside of it. Like I'd feel like I'd fall over. And I forced myself one day. My wife asked me, "What do you want to do today?" And I was like, "Let's go to the tallest building, and I'm going to look straight down." And we were in London at the time, so we went to the
oh
top
my
of the London
gosh,
chart, and I basically like crawled off the elevator, but by the end of it, I was throwing myself against the glass, like, and it's just so interesting how you can be so scared of something, but when you finally have had enough of it, you're like, I'm done with this, and then you
yeah,
face it, you end up stepping into 2 inches of water instead of that mile deep lake. And you realize, oh, I can do this. This is possible for me. And then you suddenly realize that this is possible for me. This is possible for somebody else.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Well, again, Ben, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. Sorry, you were saying something?
you're just fine. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah,
All right, Ben, keep us in the loop with what's going on. Everybody who wants to Ben, we're going to put all his contact information in the bio. So make sure you check it out, reach out. If you know someone who's struggling or if you need a little bit of help, come check us out too. And besides that, everybody, thank you for being here. God bless. Ben, thank you so much for sharing your story and reminding us that some of the biggest battles people face are the ones nobody can see. If there was one thing to take away from today's episode, it's that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's taking the next step anyway. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a little hope today. Until next time, keep paddling.